Hi, Anna.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to have you. Anna Mazarsky. We're at the Meet.Capital Startup Podcast, and you've been advising startups for 7 or 8 years now. And I know that you've had hundreds, more than 500 startups you told me that you worked with, including startups that came to exits and tens of millions of dollars raised. So you have a lot of experience. And I know you also do something special with your clients, which is you help them prepare for investor questions. And sometimes you even come along meetings and help them during the meetings deal with tough questions. So that's going to be our topic. But before we get into it, anything to add about yourself or your experience that we should know about?
Okay, first of all, it's a pleasure to be at your podcast. I've listened to several, I've been listening to you for a while, and it's a
Thanks.
very value-adding, important podcast. So it's a real pleasure and privilege to be here. And as for me and my company, basically we cut the bullshit from the fundraising process because there's so much clutter in the way and there's so many misunderstanding of the process and what investors really want and how to prepare for the process properly so that even when startups approach like hundreds of investors, they left without any funds or they're left with less than they wanted or with irrelevant investors or with really non-profitable shitty deals. And so here is where, like you mentioned, I work with more than 500 startups. From my experience, from a company to a company, from a fundraising process to a fundraising process, I started to understand where are the pitfalls and addressing them. And as you've mentioned, being ready to meet the investors and being ready for their questions and anticipate in advance what they will be looking for and prepare a really smart response to it. It's a really vital part of the fundraising, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even more important than the pitch deck. Like I know that people love the pitch deck, like they praise it, but like being ready for meeting the investors, it's really, really important.
Yeah, so obviously everyone knows that you need to prepare your pitch, and along with that, your deck, which is your pitch deck, and then and your storyline. Those things are super important. But there's what happens once the pitch is over. Then or even during that, investors will ask questions. And if you're not prepared to answer those questions, no matter how brilliant your pitch is, it's all going to shambles. So let's talk a bit about the kind of questions that investors are likely to ask and how to prepare for them. So what is a typical question that an investor asks after seeing the pitch?
And first of all, before I'm getting to the after the pitch, I'm going to like take you a step before is to break your like it's the important thing is to break the pitch into what I want to say in the pitch and what I anticipate as the Q&A section. And like even if it's on the same PowerPoint or Canva or whatever medium you're using, it needs to come like, oh, I'm happy to see that you're asking. Because for example, the team questions, right? Everybody likes talking about the team because, especially in early stages, in seed rounds, investors will invest in the team and not specifically in the product, right? Because it's more important to see that the team that you're working with are dedicated, that they have the right background, um, that they agile enough, they have some business understanding, and when investors are questioning the team, they will not ask you directly, okay, so what's your experience? You will probably have a slide for it, right? You will have a slide for the founders and perhaps some other key team members that you will be showing in your pitch. But when investors will ask you about your team, they will do it like usually, like not there indirectly. they will ask, okay, so what's the sales experience of the founders, or who of the founders will be in charge of the sales? This is like they will want to see specific abilities and skills of the founders, which are not necessarily shown at the pitch deck, but are vital to the success of the company. Because if none of the founders can sell, most likely that nobody will be able to sell, because they won't be able to also get the right salespeople. They will not be even thinking correctly with how to sell. So all of these projections that they've shown in the financials will probably be not not being able
Not
to
met.
be
Yeah.
achieved, not met. So they will be asking about the abilities and the skills and the experience of the team in those points of the company which are vital to the success of the company. It can be in the operations, it can be in the sales and marketing sides. If it's a heavily HR reliant startup, so they will be asking about the interpersonal skills. So this is one set of questions that, again, each startup is unique. I'm guessing that for the deep tech startup, it's less relevant because there it will be more technologically focused questions, and the founders will be more tech focused, and etc. But still, if it's not a very specific deep tech startup and it's a regular type of startup that wants to expand into the next market and etc., they will have to know what are their strengths and also to emphasize it. And then they will have to, if they are not experts, they will have to also explain or tell the story of how they're going to overcome their own weaknesses, right? For
Yeah.
example, none of the startup founders are salespeople. None of them, like they're all tech guys and they're all like very focused on the technology and expansion and they love their idea. So you need to understand that you have this weakness of not being able to expand. And already in this part, say, okay, we are not salespeople, but we are already looking for the best business development or the marketing person or the sales. And one of the reasons that we want you as an investor, because we want you as a smart investor, for example, if they're smart and they're approaching smart investors, is also to guide us to help us define who is this best person for us to help us with the sales, right?
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
know your internal weakness and address them. And then once you address them and you acknowledge that you're not the perfect founder, like because most founders are not the perfect founders.
Yeah.
So, but if you acknowledge your weakness and you say, yeah, this is on my priority, this is why I need the funding for, this is why it's on my roadmap, is to get this first person, is to get the operations manager, because I personally know how to deal with the technology. My co-founder knows how to deal with marketing. None of us has ever had a logistics background. We're looking for the best logistics person to join us. And once you
Yeah.
acknowledge it, investor will really appreciate it because they understand that you understand what needed to be done. So this is one
Yeah.
set of
I'd
questions.
say, if I can just like recap, I think the point is you need to think of what are going to be your growth metrics. If you're if you're deep tech and you're heavily on R&D as the next stages, then you need to address that. But if your success is going to be based on corporate sales, that's one thing. If it's based on marketing, that's another thing. You need to know how to tie your future success to your team. And if you don't have the right team members, then you also need to be able to address that and be prepared to how you're going to solve the lack of relevant team member, and be prepared to address that and not be kind of surprised or taken aback by the kind of question that will come up. Okay, great. So that's about team. What next?
Next is, it's not about the team. I had something to add, by the way. It's also
Okay.
not to argue.
Okay.
Don't argue with your investor. Maybe I should have left it to the end, but it's like you mentioned, it's like be ready to acknowledge and to see. There are too many cases where I've personally witnessed the founder starting to argue with the investor on, yeah, we don't really need that, right? He's like saying, yeah, you, like I've actually witnessed it. Like the investor says, you need sales. I want you to see, show me how you're going to make sales. You're saying that you're going to do blah, 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 blah. This is your roadmap. You're going to be, okay, so how you're going to do the sales? I'm looking at your team. I only see R&D and I see administrative and maybe one marketing. I don't see any strong sales team. And the founder started arguing with him, saying, no, we're now focusing on that. This will be next. We don't, it's not really important. It's like he actually started to argue, and you can see the investor at that moment, like
Yeah.
shush. So this is a one thing. Another thing is also understanding, like if you're on sales, because it's kind of like investors really, like investors want you to understand sales, sometimes even
Yes.
more than marketing. And founders don't really understand sales, especially if they're coming from the tech angle. Um, so they will ask about the life cycle of the client, right? Describe to me the usual life cycle of how a client will get to you. Like they will see you somewhere. What would they need to do to be interested? How many of them do you expect to convert? Why do you expect them to be converted into active customers and then maybe paying customers, maybe recurrent customers, and then etc., etc., right? Every product, every company has their own life cycle of the company. But you really need to understand, why would your customer be converted and how will it be converted from a regular John Doe or a regular company that doesn't know you exist into a premium paying client, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
B2B, whether it's B2C, whether it's even government, like if governments are your clients, still you need to really understand your customer journey here and how you're going to address this instead of saying, yeah, we will convert.
Yeah. And I guess if you're really early stage and you don't really know how that journey is going to look exactly, then at least need to A, acknowledge that, like you mentioned before, and B, show some level of understanding as to what the process is and what you need to learn and what kind of um, research you need to do on your clients to understand how the sales will work if you're at a very, very early stage and you still don't have all that figured out.
Precisely, precisely. And even then, you probably like part of your preparation of the pitch is to learn your competitors, right? So see how they do it. Like, what's the current way of doing things? Maybe in the process, when you grow, you will improve it, fine. But at least know how it's done, correct? Currently, instead of saying we will convert.
Yeah.
So this is another. And this leads me to another question. There's no such thing as we don't have competition. Right? I think you've
Yeah.
also seen that
Yeah.
with your experience and all of the startups that you've ever had the opportunity to work with. Too many of them say, yeah, I know we're in blue ocean, right? Like there's no competition. There's always competition because currently
Yeah.
it is being done without you. So even if
Yeah.
it's not the best competition, if it's not the smartest, if it's not direct on the same code string or on the same technology, there is competition. There are substitutions to you. There are alternatives to your solution. All of
Yeah.
these
Even
are
if
your
it's just a
competition.
current status quo, right?
Exactly. But it is a competition. Like somebody is used to using, like, even like I'm taking the iPhone example. People are used to use their Nokias. You remember Nokia,
Yeah.
the snake game? But it was the status quo. People are looking to, like, the status quo was people want smaller and smaller phones and smaller in their pockets. And then iPhone had to say, like, if it, for example, they would say, yeah, no, we don't have any competition. Nobody is doing touch phones. They probably would have been lost because they could not define. If you don't know your competition, how can you define precisely your pain points of the customers? Like if you really disregard the part that somebody has a solution to his problem, but now you have to define your problem and then you can really tell your story in a better way. So there's always a competition and we need to acknowledge that.
And you need to
Really
be
acknowledge.
and be prepared to answer how things are done
Exactly.
with your competitors.
Yeah, exactly. Even if we don't have like ChatGPT, nobody is doing generative AI, right? Before beginning
Yeah.
of 2023. But there was a competition. People were doing things differently. They used to think. And the problems with thinking is it takes so much time, resources, you don't know, and then ChatGPT solved it. But it was the way things were done before that.
Yeah.
So once you like, I think from this interview, I kind of like thinking already. Once you acknowledge all of the risks, all of the challenges, all of the weak points of yourself, of your startup, of your solution, of your product, of your process, of whatever, once you acknowledge all of these, you can then, from acknowledging, find a solution and find the explanation of how you're going to address this. And this is how you will win the investor.
Yeah.
Because it shows that you're humble enough not only to say, yeah, I have the best solution and this is why I think it will work. It was also humble enough to say, it's not perfect, but I know how to address the not perfect in order to grow.
Yeah.
So, and then no matter what question would the investor will ask, you will say, yeah, I understand this is part of my weaknesses. My financial model is not perfect yet. It's still based on only evaluations and on market cap, right? Because especially if you're early stage, you don't have any traction. Like your P&L for the next 5 years will be, we just made it up.
Yeah.
Investors know that. They just want you to see that you understand that it's being made up and you have the means and process internally with yourself and with your founders on how to address. And then you
Yeah.
can say, yeah, this is why we need the money for, because we need to develop it. This is why we're looking for the funding, because we want to address this weakness. This is a weakness that we will address in 2 years. Currently, it's irrelevant because it's not damaging us yet. In 2 years, we understand that this is a weakness that we will need to address. This is why we're already anticipating the funds for.
Yeah.
Right? It's all part of the preparation of really like looking at the mirror of what's stopping you. In terms, okay, this is a good one. Next question. Now is the
Yeah.
finance, the money. Um, Again, it's a question that not many founders are ready with it, and it's the point of what will you do once the funds run out? Like, right? It's usually framed as what's your runway. I think almost every startup gets to hear it, but the sub question beneath the what's your runway is that they want you to the investors want to see whether you're really smart with the funds that you're raising now and that you understand the amount of work needed to get the funds. Like I'll explain. Too many startups and founders, especially in the beginning, they say, yeah, I will only raise for the next 8 to 12 months, right? They're looking for funds to close a certain gap before the next raise. It's usually like when they see it on their decks. It's like they're saying, okay, I only need it for 8 months, for 12 months to get me, I need like 400,000 to get me to the next stage. And then I will do the seed round, then I will do the A round for the 3-4 million. But usually it's not enough because investors understand that just to get the money, just to go on the fundraising process, just to go on the fundraising itself, it's something like 4 to 6 months of active, intensive work of the founder, right? It's
Yeah.
not like, hi guys, I need money, send it over. It doesn't work like that. It's actually an active work of something approximately between 4 to 6 months. Depends on your network, depends on your charismatics, on your story, on your pitch, on your whatever. But it's usually like that. Even if unless this is your 10th startup and you're super well connected, and with one phone call you can guarantee the money because like everybody knows you and you're like a walking unicorn. Most people really need to work on their fundraising, and investors understand that. So when you're telling the investor, like, listen, right now, give me 300, it will last me for 8 months. they're starting to think, okay, so I'm giving you the money, but it will run out before time. It won't be enough to get the KPIs that he's mentioning. And to get to the next round, it's another 6 months. So basically, he needs money for a year and a half to get the KPIs that he's looking for and to have enough time for the next round. So he's going to burn my money, not have enough. He will run out of time, and his runway is not accurate. So I'm not going to invest in because he will lose my money.
Yeah. So I think there are two things here. So one is that the investor wants to hear that the founders are smart about how they're managing their money and how they're planning ahead. And the second
Including
thing
the
is,
next raise and the time it will take them.
yeah, and also that um, founders often want to kind of show that things are going to move very fast and that the next stage is going to come very soon, and therefore they don't need much, and kind of to go for less because it seems like they're asking for less, but actually the investor wants to hear more, that they're planning for a longer time ahead and will have a longer runway so that their investment is safer.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
kind of like I've heard one investor say, give me a proposal for $1 million. I will tell you it's too expensive, and give me another proposal for $100 million, and I will say, wow, it's cheap. And I will
Yeah.
invest the 100 and not the one, because the 100 makes more sense. It gives me more time to reach my KPIs. It gives me an understanding that there will be problems along the way, and there are chances that I won't get the KPIs that I want. So I need to have this buffer. And many founders don't raise the buffer, right? They raise, yeah, I don't want to ask too much. I'm afraid to ask too much. So I will only ask the minimum. But then this minimum really what stops them, and they get them to be stuck. And investors understand that because they're preferring to invest 2 million in something which is with the understanding of the processes, the challenges of how much time and etc. versus 400, it's somebody who will burn it in 6 months and will be stuck in the next problem. So this is a very important thing to address. Okay, another part is on the technology. And it's usually something that I see that many founders are prepared with, but still, and it's the understanding how easily you can be replicated, copied, and whether you need regulations and issues with the regulations, patents, like all of these things that sometimes it's actually less common, but I still see it when founders don't really pre-address these when they're preparing, because yeah, we have a great technology, right? We have the perfect app, we have the perfect solution, but then how easily are you copied?
Yeah.
The moment they start not to have a really good answer on that, also the investor won't invest in them because they're easily copied, or at least they don't understand what needed to be done to protect, or what steps are needed to be done to be first to market before others can copy you and make you successful. Because
Yeah.
I don't know, perhaps somebody with more resources and more like access to resources can see what you're doing, say, oh, I like it. I have 100 million spare here. I will invest, copy you. Maybe it will not be perfect, but I will be first to market. So you need to understand how you're going to protect your intellectual property, your technology, your code, whatever, even if it's not being patented.
Yeah. Even if you
That's
don't
right.
have the perfect answer, at least you need to know that, show that you are addressing the issue and you have some way of dealing with it, or some solution to it, or some understanding of um, how the risks that you're taking with your technology or the competition might impact you. And if you're prepared for that, that's fine, or at least you have some awareness of what's going on and not some kind of unaware wishful thinking.
Exactly. It's very important. Like with health tech startups, it's easy because they just need to patent, right? But it's even when you are approaching patent, like to patent your technology, it doesn't take a day or two, right? The process of registering the patent, and it's in the EU and the US, and then maybe in Asia, and then here and there. And it will take between a year and 3 years on average, depends on the complexity of the solution and other solutions. So what do you do in the meanwhile, right? How do you address the fact that it's just patent pending or patent applied? So you should understand even then, even as in the patent world, you need to understand what will happen in the meantime until you'll get your patent. Because I know personally of a company that just because they didn't send the responses or they didn't prepare the patent registration properly and they were missing one or two documents, somebody else beat them to the same solution, and they just like lost millions of sales, hundreds of millions of sales just on that part, and they lost their future investment. So anything can happen in the process, and once you're going at it, you really need to understand all of the things that comprise this defending your technology, right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm an investor and not sure that you as the founder know what to do and how to protect yourself, most likely you will lose me money and I will not invest in you.
Yeah.
It's easy as that. Even if you're a very nice person, I believe with you personally. So yeah. Another thing, which is also an indirect kind of like smart question of an investor, will be to ask you about any challenges which were unexpected that you had to overcome in the process so far, right? It can feel like, where is this question coming from? Like, I'm talking with you about my app, I'm talking with you about my health tech solution, I'm talking with you about my sustainable converting alternative protein solution, whatever. And then you come and you say, no, tell me about any challenges that you didn't expect and like that you had to overcome. Like sometimes founders, it can be because sometimes if you're in a very early stage, it means personally, because the investor wants to see how you usually, or not even usually, what's your approach to challenges or unexpected problems or any hurdles that you have to overcome. If it's a co-founder team, it will be a joint question to see how they communicate with one another at that point, or what's their connection and their relationship in that moment when they had to both come up with. It's kind of like a tricky question, but it shows the dynamic between the founders, for example.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's also something to prepare for, like agree on two, three scenarios, two, three cases that you already know that you had to overcome. Maybe it was to find a co-founder. Maybe it was like with another two startups that failed before you even reached this one, which didn't fail, right?
Yeah.
It may be something personal, like I had to deal with the loss of a loved one and how I had to overcome it. There are so many cases,
Yeah.
but you need to have in your response package, in your response bag, at least two, three scenarios. And if it's a co-founder team, they have to have like a synergy on their response. Like they have
Yeah.
to, in that point, this is a great opportunity to support one another's case. Like one is talking, one is like adding additional information. And then it's like really good, if they're seeing a really good synergy with the co-founders and that they're like, with the basketball, they're like giving to each other. It's a great dynamic and they love it. If at
Yeah.
that point they're starting like to now, this was it, like starting to argue, also can break the point. Um, this is one. And also on the co-founder team, especially with co-founders, make sure that you have some sort of a co-founders agreement. Now, not many co-founders do that. I think in the early stages, very few or less than 50% do it. and it actually can hurt you with investors, with smart investors. Like, because if you have a co-founders agreement, and it's a legal co-founders agreement, not even something that you wrote on a napkin, and it's a really good, like you say, yeah, we took the time, we understand that not everything is going to be perfect along the way. We understand that things can happen in the future once our honeymoon will be over, right? And we already took the we took the responsibility in advance to address any challenges that we may have in the future, and in the moment of peace discussed everything and agreed upon things. It really makes the investor feel really secure about this investment, because relationships end,
Yeah.
right? Not only husband and wife, co-founders can end the relationship. They want to continue to elsewhere. What happens if it doesn't work? What happens if it does work? Like, lots of things can happen that a really good co-founders agreement can address. And sometimes investor ask, like if it's a co-founding team, they will ask about it,
Yeah.
or at least to see that you understand that this is important.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of ground, and there's a lot more questions that you can that I can
Tons.
think of, and I'm sure that you can think of. But I think the main point is to kind of try to think like an investor and try to understand what an investor would like to know, and be prepared to show that you're thinking of problems coming ahead of time, and that you have solutions, even if you don't have the solution, that you have an idea of how to come to the solution, and each relevant topic that's come up. Anna, this was very, very useful. Thank you so much.
Great.
Who should reach out to you? How should people reach out to you?
Okay, great. So first, yeah, there's like this is a really huge topic. When I work on it with my clients, it's like several hours of session just to come up with the questions, by the way, and then to prepare the answers and then to drill it. And in terms of who should address me, these are companies that are not too early stages, but those that are ready for their usually seed round, round A, and etc., that are ready to take over the big guys and the big investors world when they want to approach VCs or more professional investors or professional angels. And they really should approach me, even if to get the fundraising readiness evaluation. Like, I do a 20-minute session with companies, with founders, just to estimate how ready are they. Because just this estimation of saying, hey, guy, first work on your marketing, then go to the investor, it can it can change the whole course of the potential of success of the fundraising. And just to get this part, and of course, those that are already ready and they're ready to get their 1, 2, 5, 10 millions and above, and they need professional guidance and to ensure that their lack of preparation won't hurt their meetings, so that every meeting will be an actual potential investor term sheet.
Cool. So should they go to your website, or where
No,
should
you
people
can
find you?
contact me on my LinkedIn on Anna Mazarsky. And
Okay,
it's LinkedIn
we'll
Anna
put the
Mazarsky.
link in.
You can approach, yeah. It will be the best. I'm more available there. I'm always there. And because also the website is now being redone, so it's not the best at this stage. And yeah, you can feel free to reach out, question, discuss. My goal is to help the startups succeed, right? This is eventually my internal calling, you can say that. So I'll be happy to
Excellent.
help. And
Thanks,
thank you
Anna.
for having me, Tzakhi. It was a pleasure, and you're doing an amazing job.
Thanks so much. This was a very, very, very good talk. Thanks so much, Anna.